Hello and welcome to Talking TSM, TGH's talk show about LCS. Yeah, TSM's LCS team. There we go. I'll get this down one of these days. Glad to be here another week. Glad that, spoiler alert, we get another week of two shows because, well, TSM will be playing in the finals weekend after their win over 100 Thieves, solidifying them as a top 3 team. No surprise. But also, getting them a chance at revenge against Team Liquid. My prediction of C9 losing was very wrong. TL just looked completely discombobulated. It was not a good series from them. And now, TSM will come off I'm going to call it a weird series. I don't really know how else to say it other than just, it felt weird. And I guess I'll just dive into it now in game one, and we'll just kind of walk ourselves through it. So, in game one, TSM started this just weird trend of Gnar first pick. And I understand taking it away from Someday, making him play something that was not one of his best picks. We talked about this. We did. And, TSM ended up, making the decision to ban the Gnar and the Renekton later, which is fine. But it was just strange that they were early picking, first pick in the first game, but early picking overall the Gnar. And it's quite a sacrifice from Huni in this series. Huge sacrifice. And then they pick the Nidalee. And I'm like, what? I mean, we haven't seen Nidalee in weeks. And I know that she's strong. I trust me, I understand that. But it just it didn't make sense to me to do it like right away, But then they picked the Rel, and I'm like, okay, that's good. I love that. I'm like, okay, I can deal with the rest of this draft because I'm not as afraid of Lilia. They, 100 Thieves responds with, Jace and Lucian, and then I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, weird draft. We take it. Then TSM pick Jinx and Ori, and I'm like, okay, they're here to play. I like Jinx right now. I think she's strong, and I think that she gets even stronger in later patches. So, yeah, good to see them bring her out. This was the first patch I believe that she received a buff on, a pretty good buff. So, very happy with their response here. So I like the last 3 picks. Did not like the first 2 picks. And I don't mind the Gnar. I just don't like the Gnar first pick. So in all reality, I'm happy with 4 of their 5 picks. I just don't get the Nidalee with this team. Gonna be completely honest with you. I think there are some other options. One in particular is the Olaf. And I will dive into that later. I really don't know what 100 Thieves are trying to do with this draft. Honestly, 3 marksmen are fine, and I think that Ashe being a more supportive marksman is totally fine as well. But only having the Alistar as your front line is going to be a problem. And we see it in this game and in the game subsequently. Like, I don't understand why so many of these teams are going 4 squishies and 1 kind of tank, but, like, they keep doing it, and they keep not succeeding with it, and I just don't understand it. I don't know. Anyways, Spica gets over eager, tries to take a camp, ends up dying in the early game, gives them an early lead, and TSM lose the first Drake, which was the story of the series. They're just giving dragons like candy. Then Huni gets a really big 1-for-1 on a dive by Someday. It was very clear in this first game. Sunday getting Jace, 100 Thieves are like, all right, we are going to play into Someday. And Someday has not been the same player this year. He just hasn't. He's looked off all season long. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do this summer because it might not be great for him. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying he's going to get like let go or moved or anything. They better not do that. That'd be such a 100 Thieves thing to do though. But he struggled, and they need to figure something out with that. But they give him the opportunity to carry, and he just loses a 1-for-1 for no reason. Then TSM take a Rift Herald without throwing. Shocker. But that death from Someday like snowballs this game for TSM because they take the Rift and then they get both top towers. And considering that Someday was the one that they were funneling the gold into, like, this is major. Now he's back to one tower in the top lane, and it's the one inside the base. Now Huni can move around and do what he does best, which is make plays on the Gnar. He played a very strong, again, spoiler alert, weak side throughout this entire series. And, you know, I was saying, like, you know, I don't want to see him on just the Nocturne and the Camille like last week. And they listened. Again, to the TSM person who is listening to this show, I do appreciate that. But I still don't get the Gnar early. I just don't totally understand it because we see later on that 100 Thieves aren't going to prioritize it either. So obviously you can't know that until you allow it, you know, for the risk, but that's okay. We head into the mid and late game, and there are two just big picks on the Someday. You know, he goes from being up 1-0, a bunch of gold, to being 2-4, lost both his towers. Someday's just playing with too much confidence. You know, he's up in all the CS, he's pushing too hard, and TSM just make him pay. They do 2 roams up to the top lane, and, you know, both on the Sword Art Rel, by the way. He plays that champion so well, and it's just a good play. It's just a really good play. Clearly his Rel is OP, to say the least. Then we get a big ulti from PoE onto Ryoma as they're getting ready for the Drake, and that really turns everything around. Huni gets Mega Gnar. You know, TSM get the 3rd Drake, and they turn it into a Baron. Then they get 2 kills off of that. And you know, and just the game is just swung, you know, wide open for TSM at this point. And Lost is looking, by the way, very comfortable on this Jinx pick. He doesn't play it as well, and obviously in Game 3, but I think that's not really his fault. But overall, seeing him really expand his champion pool has been something I don't think I've talked about enough, but something that I've wanted to see as this split has gone on. It is very clear to me that Lost is a top 5 AD carry in the league right now. Now, we'll see if he has a slump, you know, a sophomore slump next year or going into this next split. I hope he doesn't, but he looks like he belongs up here, and he looks comfortable. And seeing him do it on the Kai'Sa, on the Tristana, on, you know, the Kalista, the Ezreal, the Jinx, he's done it on all these different picks. And I think, you know, the Jhin earlier in the season too. Don't want to forget that. And it's clear to me that this is just the beginning of his potential. There is a chance he could very well make himself into one of the best AD carries in the league, given more time. And so I'm thrilled. Very, very nice start for him to his career so far. No matter what happens next week. I just want to give him the kudos that he deserves here. Anyways, you know, 100 Thieves, they get a pick onto Huni in the mid lane, and then I know TSM has a good setup and they're up, but they don't even try to force a 5v4 for the next Drake. So TSM get another Drake, and 100 Thieves try to push in the top lane. They don't really get much for it. And Sword Art just finds FBI napping in the mid lane, pops onto him dead. Then TSM are fighting for Baron. Sword Art turns it around. They kill Huhi too. And then TSM just win the base race. Plain and simple. This was the cleanest game from TSM in this series, and it's because they were anticipating an early game loss. They knew that that's what was going to happen. They have two very very good scaling champions in the Jinx and the Orianna, and then they have a great team fight, late game team fight with the Rel and the Gnar. Again, that's where I don't know where the heck this Nidalee comes into play. She doesn't have a really easy, a javelin to jump in, to throw from, however far away, because, even if Huni gets off a stun or a smash into a wall, there's the whole moving aspect of it. Even the Rel, moves people around with her ult. Orianna moves people around with her ult. And I know that she's worth more than that now, but that's her best way to do damage and to engage. And it just felt like, even though TSM played this game really well, I mean, really well, guys, because I consider this to be the perfect game for them, which, yes, I know it didn't look like it. I know there were some plays here and there, but this is what they want with this comp. Because guess what? There is not one champion on 100 Thieves that can do a damn thing about Jinx once the game gets further and further and further along. If 100 Thieves don't have a massive lead by about 15, 20 minutes in, it's over. And we saw that. And so I think TSM, they just played it. They're like, sure, we'll give up some stuff early game. We don't care about the Drake. We don't care about the early kills. We don't care even about the early tower. But guess what? We will eventually scale. And if you guys give us anything, it's over for you. And they just played that well. They played it really well. And they closed out a nice, very easy base race. The Orianna goes back, helps out the Gnar. They get some kills. They TP up. And they just win. It was a great game from them. And it didn't look like TSM really had to pull out anything crazy. Like, sure, they hadn't pulled out the Nidalee in a while. Sure, they pull out the first pick Gnar, which is still strange to me. And yeah, they pull out, the Jinx for, I think, the second time for loss this season. But they didn't have to do anything outside of their norm, which, in the Evil Geniuses series and in the Team Liquid series, TSM have had to they've had to pull out things that they weren't as comfortable with, or things that we hadn't really seen in games, I should say, beforehand. And instead, this time they just went back to their tried and true, this whole series pretty much. And it worked. It worked for them. We head into game 2. They have to give up the Tryst. There's just not much that they can do. I have no issues with that personally. I think giving up the Tryst in the first pick is is completely understandable. You gotta ban the Senna. You just don't give FBI that champion. We talked about it. Don't think you're gonna see Renekton the whole series. You don't. And we talked about the Hecarim. Closer's Hecarim is really strong. And so I think it got banned on red side every single game this series. So that's okay. I'm very happy with the way that went, and giving up the Tryst means that's okay, because then TSM somehow get the Kai'Sa in the second round, by the way. Don't know how that got through. I mean, it's been Lost's best champion all season. Why would 100 Thieves just give him that? The Jinx and the Rel were that scary that you need. I mean, TSM muff up the draft, if you ask me. I mean, blind pick the Gnar and the Nidalee after the Tristana. No thanks. Here's what I want to see. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Let me take a drink real quick. Drink of water before I go on this mini rant. All right. Olaf is up. And I know that Spica doesn't love to play him, but Olaf just works so much better into the way that TSM are playing. And it is very easy for TSM. Tryst to 100 Thieves. Kai'Sa, Rel. I know that the Tryst could go, can flex into bot or mid. I don't care. You pick the Kai'Sa because it's Lost's best champion. You pick the Rel because Sword Art can play the heck out of the Rel, and there's not a great counter to her right now. I don't care about the Alistair. I don't care about all the other things like, Belly Bop and Gragas. And I guess the Braum kind of plays okay into her, but like she's the strongest support right now in the game. You play her. Like the Nidalee is not a priority here. It's just not. I don't understand it. It's not like Closer's gonna pull it out and surprise everybody. I don't personally think that that was the case. So you go instead, in my opinion, you go Kaisa Rel, and then Hunter Thieves, likely still picks the Lilia. Okay? Or if they're going to pick the Olaf, or if they're going to, well, they obviously don't pick Olaf. So if they're going to pick the Nidalee, then you have Lilia or Olaf to pick, which are both good champions for Spica. And they get the Jace after that because they picked the Gnar early. I mean, I would have loved to, sure, if they get the Gnar, then so be it. Then let Huni play the Jace into the Gnar. He's totally comfortable with that. Or you just pick the frickin' Olaf. You don't worry about it. Let him ban Jace. Who cares? I know Sunday's good on Gnar, but I just... even if they went Gnar, fine. You know what? Fine. Pick the Gnar. I just even slightly talked myself out of it. Pick the Gnar and then the Olaf. And then the Rel. I just don't get the Nidalee pick. I just don't understand it. Because then, even if, like, here's the deal. Like, even if they get the Gnar, if you go with the Kaisa, Rel, and Olaf in the first, round for TSM there, then they can more easily pick PoE or Huni a counter pick. Like a strong counter pick. Now, I know TSM ends up picking the Syndra, which I like that pick, into the Tristana. And they get the Kaisa. I think Hunter Thieves were begging them to pick it. It just seemed like they wanted FBI on the Ashe, even though he was pretty not great on the Ashe. He wasn't bad, but he just wasn't great. And it's like... I don't know. Even Hunter Thieves didn't pick the Kaisa, and that's FBI's best champion too. So she's the strongest champion in terms of 80 carries in this patch. I don't know. It was a very weird draft, very strange. Like I said, early game. Oh yeah, and I do want to point this out too. Like, a couple other things here on the draft. Hunter Thieves just goes squishy again. Braum is your only frontline. True frontline. Like, I know Jace can kind of jump in. I know Lilia can run around, but. What do you... you face check with the Braum and he's dead, and then what do? You better hope that you're up by a lot. And the Trist is a better late game than what they saw in game 1 with the Lucian, but still, it's just... Ryoma's known for his control mages, and you pick him double 80 carry. Are you really that afraid of the Power of Evil stuff? That's a lot of respect towards Power of Evil, and I know he's really good, and I know he's way better than Ryoma, but man, taking the kid, I want to ask this question for 100 Thieves fans who might be listening, or for just LCS fans in general, or even TSM fans who might pay attention to 100 Thieves. Why take out Damonte for Ryoma if you're just going to put him on 280 carries in your pivotal last matchup, potentially last matchup for the entire spring? Like, what? Are you gonna tell me that TF or Gallia wouldn't have been better for 100 Thieves with this team? Yeah, it would have been. You could have easily gotten Damonte in there, and guess what? That takes more bans away. That opens up more stuff for someday. Listen, I'm not against Ryoma. I actually think he played a pretty good series. I'm really not. I think Ryoma adds stuff. I think Damonte adds stuff. But if you're going to put Ryoma on double 80 carry in the first 2 games of the most important series of this season at this point, up to this point, then just play Damonte. I think Hunter Thieves are better with Damonte. I think they have a more defined play style. I just think they're a better team. And 100 Thieves do 100 Thieves things where they just make weird roster decisions and then they end up doing this stuff. Leave it to Zix, too, by the way. Just strange, man. Really strange. And the last thing is teams keep playing Lilia into TSM. Quick note for all of you guys. TSM wants that. They've been giving the Lilia over to every single team that they've been playing against in the playoffs. And actually, like, just recently, completely. I think TSM won it. I think they've just prepared for it. I don't think they care at all. And I don't think Lilia has had that major of an impact against them over the last, month and a half or so. Might be a controversial opinion here, but keep playing Lilia into us, guys. See what happens. TSM just do not care about it. I know that TSM are playing a scaling comp, but giving up the first Drake all series long and then losing the second one to a Smite steal in this game 2 specifically, not great, especially when you're picking a bad matchup into Huni. Like, if Huni's going to be playing the weak side, then it needs to be a true weak side, right? That means that TSM have to hyper-focus in the bot lane. And if the Nidalee doesn't get ahead or doesn't get, like, a couple kills or even just one kill and an assist early on, then she's kind of useless later on in the game. And so you better hope that you're focusing your bot lane. You're focusing on getting the kills. And it's just, they didn't do that in either of these games and really in the whole series. And so I'm sitting here, excuse me, as I stretch. I'm sitting here and I'm like, what are we doing? Like, guys, what are we doing here? Think about making that a new segment, by the way. Quick side note. I kind of want to do like a bro, what are you doing? Or a guys, what are you doing segment. I think it's going to be a bro, what was that? Or a bro, what are you doing? Let me know. Let me know in the comments below. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are because I would love to do that as a section. I think that'd be really funny. It could be very interesting. It basically just calls out either, TSM or the team they're playing and go, bro, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? TSM's going to get a lot of that if they keep throwing at Rift Heralds. I can tell you that much. It's going to be a lot of, guys, what are you doing? Why are we doing this? Anyways, yeah, I mean, so a first, bro, what are you doing in game 2? I know Spica's pretty far behind, but it's like, dude, they have got to go after the Drakes here. You have got to get priority. And if you're going to have, you can't just let the Lilia walk up when you're already attacking the Drake. Like, come on, guys. Wow, that was just really not great. That's a bad look. If they play a better team, that's going to get punished a lot harder. Just saying. TSM do get 2 kills off of it, though, which is good. It's a nice turnaround by Sword Art specifically. He didn't play the best series, but he was solid. I mean, yet again, he's a good player. I don't care about the $3 million, whatever. They brought over a good support and a guy who finished second, I believe. It was either second or third, in All-Pro in his first season over here. After the crappy start we saw him in lock-in, yeah, there's a chance he could just end up being the best support in the LCS, which is awesome. That's so good to see. And again, considering how badly the game started for Spica, they turned around, they catch him up. They get a tower, they get 2 kills. It's like, all right, early game, they accepted that the first 10 minutes of the game were not going to go towards their way, but then after that, they start turning it on. But then Drake 3 gets stolen again. TSM do respond with 2 kills for 1. Lost barely dies at the end. And the game is not looking bad, but it's not looking great. And then Sword Art sees them coming up through, the blue side, red side, red buff. And instead of running away, he's like, guys, we got this. Let's do this, right? TSM just make I would argue, one of their best plays of the season. As soon as the Baron comes up, they're ready for it. They know the 100 Thieves are coming. They just turn on them, get a couple huge kills, and then they take the Baron. And this Baron power play puts them up ahead for the first time in the game. And they played. God, it was such a nice play. It's like, all right, guys, that's the kind of coordination I like seeing. They've been kind of playing dead for the first two games. They didn't have to try too hard in game one, and in game two they're down, and they're making good plays, but it's just feeling like it's a pretty casual game. I'm not even really worried during either of these games so far. TSM get another Drake. Sword Art unfortunately gets caught warding, but I mean, sometimes that's just going to happen as a support. I don't think he was that far overextended. It just happens. Spica hits a big Baron, but then TSM back and just give up the soul for no reason. And this almost costs them the game. I was a little nervous, I'll admit. Not like really nervous, but a little bit at this point. Because truly, like, giving up the soul was the only way 100 Thieves could even have a chance in this game. And it was Inferno as well. Like, ugh. But I love the tenacity from TSM. They say, screw it. We got Baron. We're just going to run it down. We're going to get a kill. We're going to take an inhib. And we're going to get the bot tower. I think that's some serious cojones, man. That's some serious tenacity from the TSM squad to just be like, I don't care. Bring it on. I love it. Speaker gets caught warding after this. It was pretty much the only arrow I can really remember FBI hitting that I was like, oh man, like that's a really good arrow off of the Ashe. Yeah, it was not a great series for FBI, but that seems to happen because they pick him on the weird crap instead of just trying to play into his strength. Constant mistakes from 100 Thieves. Yes, I know I'm an FBI fanboy. I wave that flag, man. I do. But this one's for Brooks. FBI is a great player. They should have played around him in this game. They stuck him on two supportive champions before they did anything with him, and they lost those two games. I'm telling you, they win game 3, and guess what? He's on a champion he can actually do stuff with, and he does do stuff with it. It's just that you can't put him on the sixth 80 carry in the come on, man. They picked the Trist for Ryoma, and they give FBI the Ashe. Like, you don't give your best player nothing in the deciding series, and then you give the 80 carry to Ryoma. What are they thinking, man? I just don't get it. I know the series is kind of close. I'll give you my thoughts as to why TSM even allowed it to be close. I truly think that if this was like the finals or a game that TSM like really took like full on seriously, I think they absolutely stomp 100 Thieves. I do. I don't think these games are even close. I don't think TSM brought out really much. I don't know. Well, sorry. Yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. But again, like, guys, FBI on an Ashe. Why? All right, then there's this weird play that actually looked good. I remember watching this, and I'm sitting there live, and I'm like, dude, like, I love this. Lost and Sword Art are going to sneak around back. They're going to pinch them, and they go too early. They try to kill Someday. They could have waited an extra 5 seconds, and I think that they pulled this kill off because they try to jump on Someday. He doesn't die. And Spica, PoE, and Huni come to try to save them, but they could have killed Closer and Ryoma easily. They just run them down, right? Because it's a 3v2 in the top lane. You're losing your AD carry, who's your best champion in terms of being able to do damage, and you lose your only true tank in Alistar. Which, by the way, TSM committed the one thing that I don't like. Well, not they did have 2 frontliners technically, but I don't really count Gnar as a true frontliner for most of the game. So they get the kill there, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, all right, guys, like this is not great. They almost kill Closer. Probably should have just committed to that. Just run his butt down. I think they probably could have, considering the the Cougar form from Spica, and Nar's ability to just run people down. So don't know why they don't do that. Instead, they try to save their comrades. Clearly, just on really different pages here, and they almost threw the game. They end up losing the Elder, and then Spica bails them out by stealing Baron, and the Elder ends up really not mattering. Lost gets caught out for no reason in the top lane, which was disappointing, but it is what it is. And then 100 Thieves overcommit for Power of Evil over on red side, and TSM clean up at 42 minutes, and they just roll on through. And to be honest, I know it was a little bit more intense than that, but again, I'm sitting here in the game 2, and I'm like, I'm not worried. They have a better late game than 100 Thieves. They should win this. They're a better team late game. Yeah, they've made some really stupid decisions, but like truly, after they get that Baron, they should have ended the game within like 5 to 10 minutes later. But they were giving up dragons all game, and if Spica doesn't bail them out by stealing that Baron, they probably lose game 2 because of that bad play by Lossasaur. And this is the thing, is like TSM do this all the time. They're ahead in games. They try to make this over-aggressive play, and I like the idea behind it, but they're still so far off in terms of the coordination. And that's what makes it really hard to watch. I just don't understand where the huge disconnect is, because they should know that Someday has a stopwatch, and they should also know that there's no way they're going to kill him right away. Like there's just no way they one-shot him, right? And they know where everybody else is realistically on 100 Thieves. So it's a bit of a baffling decision. And, if the rest of TSM were to have followed up right away instead of turning towards closer and then coming, because, like, if PoE saves his ult, right, he can possibly use it to not only save TSM, but probably get a kill or two. Or they commit towards closer and they kill him, and it makes it so that there's no chance that they can steal, or that they can even go for a Baron, or an Elder really after this play, because TSM just give up a bunch of kills, and then they do this thing where they're snowballing, and then it's like their snowball gets goes into a random desert for some reason, and they just lose all their momentum. And it's like these one bad plays. And again, if Spica does not bail them out by stealing the Baron, it's game over. I can pretty much guarantee you that. I know that 100 Thieves had a lot more that they had to push down, but that's just bad. Anyways, they do win game 2. It was closer than it should have been. If TSM play a cleaner game, then at the very, at the end, then they win probably at like 35 minutes, and it's just they're up 2-0 and they're looking really nice. People start questioning it. They, TSM give up the Udyr, which they had been banning, or somebody had been banning. 100 Thieves had been banning. So they give up the Udyr to closer, which is fine. Again, I said you can give up the Udyr, but then they pick the Gnar and the freaking Nidalee again. And Nidalee into Udyr makes no sense to me. I don't care if Spica, like, dude, I think they just get to a point where it's like Spica's just like in autopilot mode, and they're like, yeah, well, we're gonna pick Udyr 50 times to start the game, and then we're gonna keep picking the Nidalee because the Nidalee's worked. It hasn't worked, by the way. It's been pretty meh at best. And they're like, yeah, we're just gonna pick this Nidalee into the Udyr. What? Are you serious? Ugh. Gnar Nidalee, and then guess what? Jace Orianna. Luckily, they get the Azir, which is great. But again, you could have gone Kai'Sa frickin' Rel here. They could have. They could have gone Kai'Sa Rel here, or even Jinx Rel. And then you grab the Azir and the Nidalee if they're so determined to get the Nidalee. But I still think Olaf is better here. I mean, why not? Olaf can outduel an Udyr. Once he gets Ragnarok, Udyr can't stun him. He can run right through anything the Leona does later on. I don't understand it. I don't see where the Nidalee, like, you're not gonna be able to outpoke the Jace as a Nidalee. I don't know. It doesn't fit into this comp. Again, you have the Azir. He's gonna move people off. Not an easy way to get the spear off. Even the Alistar, if the combo's not right, there's just not a lot of easy ways for the Nidalee to be involved. And yeah, her healing ended up actually playing a pretty big part. And I really like the adaption. I will say this: I love the Everfrost adaption from Spica. I do think that was really good, and I think it did set up some big plays for them, and it adds a nice bit of CC into a comp that doesn't have any. The problem is I just don't think it's worth giving up all the other options that you could have. I'm sorry, Azir is enough AP damage. You don't need Spica to do that. I just felt like he is pretty useless in these first 3 games. They end up picking the Ezreal Leona. That does not worry me really whatsoever. I know that it ends up doing a lot of damage late game, but a Jinx can outduel an Ezreal all day long. So if TSM doesn't end up getting behind in this game, it doesn't matter. I will say this real quick. Really funny, by the way. I don't understand why 100 Thieves banned the Twisted Fate. TSM aren't going to play Twisted Fate. So lols. Like big lols. Makes no sense there. TSM get first blood once again to the game, which is awesome on Sunday. But then PoE dies in the mid lane on a dive. Not much you can do. Again, Azir early game is pretty freaking bad, so not much you can do there. If he's not able to poke, he's just not able to do much. He's not great in team fights yet. He's not able really to defend himself. He's a pretty weak champion in the early game. Then Spica and Huni overcommit for someday, and Huni loses his lead. He had a nice lead. He was playing the Gnar into the Jace. He had clearly learned. He was feeling better, and they lose it. And if PoE follows, maybe they could have done something more. But Huni does get a counter kill. PoE does follow, but then just has to flash out. Loses that for nothing. And this early game is weird because they're not making great decisions, but they're winning this early game because they also get the first tower. But the problem is then Jinx is really far behind the Ezreal because the whole team commits to it. They even get the second tower. And technically, this was the best start for TSM. They were even with 100 Thieves in the early game. And TSM are playing with fire, though, all series long. Yes, TSM are out-macroing in terms of towers. They're doing a great job at that. They're making some good plays. But they gave up 3 Drakes. And even if it's a soul that's not great in the Cloud Soul, 400 Thieves. They have 2 champions in closer on the Udyr and Sunday on the Jace that, they don't really have ults. So I'm sure the speed is nice for the Udyr and can be nice for the Jace, but the ultimate, percentage cooldown doesn't help, really them at all. So sure, it's a bad soul, but TSM's just giving up the Drakes for nothing. Huni and Spica die in the bot lane, but then TSM get a Baron. Sword Art dies for it too, but Lost and Power of Evil have it, and you're like, all right, game 3 is going really well. But then before the 4th Drake fight, which they have to do at this point, because you don't want to just give up the soul, if they get 1 Drake in the first 3, then this doesn't matter, right? Then this just does not matter. They had a great early game, yet they gave up Drakes. God, they got to stop doing that. Man, just stop one of them. I don't care which one it is. But all game, you're just giving up Drakes. And they almost came back in game 2, and it's like, oh, well, we don't care. We're just going to do it again. It's like, God, man, just... Lost gets killed right beforehand because he's in a bad position, and then he takes the Blast Cone, and it doesn't do it for him. And they have to fight. They just have to because they don't want to give it up. They die. They give up the soul. They have terrible positioning. They've thrown the game pretty much right away. TSM have to fight for Elder. They actually hold off, even not being in a great position, they actually hold off 100 Thieves. But again, because the Elder is such an early portion of this game, TSM haven't had a full chance to scale up yet. And They lose the second fight at the Elder, and they lose the game because of it. And it's like, dude, you guys finally had a good game early. If you take one Drake early on, they win that game. It's that simple. They just got to stop giving that stuff up. And it's because, too, like the Nidalee's not going to outduel. I'm telling you, if they have Olaf can solo a Drake. I know that Nidalee can, but it's not as fast. It takes a really long time. And the Udyr can solo a Drake. And we saw it happen. And it's just like you pick the Olaf here, or you get a Drake, which could also be because you pick the Olaf. And it's like, I don't know. I don't really understand it. I just don't get it. There's just not, again, I am not there with the drafting, but I do remember in the latest TSM Legends, Bjergsen talked about, the throws at Rift. And I'm like, yeah. Like the team has some really bad habits. They throw at Rift. They get really predictable in their jungle picking, and they have one bad fight that they personally snowball for the other team and lose the game on. They just have to be better than that. They've got to, if they want to be an elite team, not a very good team, but an elite team, those are things they have to fix. Oh, and they got to stop giving up Drakes for nothing too. I mean, I get, you get some towers here and there, but dude, you give 3 straight freaking Drakes. It doesn't matter how far behind the other team is, because if they beat you in a soul fight, then it's over. And we saw it. So we head into game 4, and I know I was bitching and moaning about it last week, but they end up picking the Udyr first, and I actually breathed a sigh of relief. I did. And it's funny because, they give up the Tristana and they give up the Orianna, which is fine. I'm not really that upset about that. That's fine. And then TSM picks the Nocturne. And I'm like, I don't know about this. But then other thieves are like, don't worry, we'll throw this to you. We'll pick the Scion into it. What? I mean, I know he's a beefy boy. But Hooney's Nocturne is built for that, man. That's what he wants. He wants a tanky boy up there that he can just kind of just feed off of, and just they can't do anything into him. There's no chance that the Scion is going to solo kill a Nocturne. So yes, please on that. Again, they pick the Orianna. TSM picks Azir. Yes, please. Check. Tristana and Set. TSM picks Xayah and Rakan. And I know the Set comes last pick. Really strange pick, by the way, in my opinion. Xayah, Rakan. Yep. Dude, the Azir ult stops. I know that the Huni ult, or the Huhi ult, excuse me, and the closer ult, with the Set and the Olaf respectively, and even the Tristan, they can hop over the wall of Power of Evil, but bruh, it doesn't matter. You're not getting to that backline. And there really isn't even much of a backline anyways. TSM can just peel with the Xayah herself, and then they can run it. I like this draft, is what I'm trying to say. It's the first time we've seen Rakan, I think, in a really long time from Sword Art, and I love it. I think it's a great draft. The Rakan is pretty tanky, actually. He's a nice frontliner. He can face check because he can jump right out. And the Udyr is tanky as heck. And even if TSM gets one person caught, the Nocturne ultimate can stop it. I actually think this is a really good draft. There's so much dive potential from every single person on this team except for the Xayah, and she can self-peel for herself. And even though 100 Thieves have some really tanky boys, they don't have a great disengage. It's not a bad disengage, but it's not a great disengage. So TSM start the bot lane fight off really well. And then this is when I finally started getting really nervous. Well, wait, let me make sure. Is that true? I wrote down when I started getting nervous. Yeah, I was right around here. They overcommit. They're completely out of position. Azir early game is not great to fight around. And they give up the first Drake. They give up some kills. And I'm like, oh my God, we are going to game 5. How? 100 Thieves are not a great team. I'm sorry, Hi. I see you on the analyst desk, and you picked TSM to lose the week before against Evil Geniuses, and Raz lost his mind. I also lost my mind. And then you said, well, I see a world where 100 Thieves can go 3-2. I see a world like that too, bud. But, like, it doesn't happen that often. It happens maybe 5-6 times out of 100 that 100 Thieves go win a 3-2 series. But I start to think, oh, man, maybe they were right. Maybe they were right. And then TSM go, all right, Hooney, we need you, bud. And Hooney freaking turns it on. They get a kill top lane, Hooney Spica. I love it. Love that Udyr and that Nocturne combo. Teams might have to start banning Nocturne, by the way, because I think Hooney's playing it really well. And I know it works better in certain situations, but, like, dang, dude. Then they rinse or repeat. They get the tower, and they're playing through Hooney at this point. He's up like 30 CS. He's got a kill and an assist. He's got a tower. But then they give up the second freaking Drake again. I'm like, come on, guys. Starting to get nervous again. FBI gets 2 kills. Hooney's late to respond and dies for 1 kill. So it's a 3-for-1. That's not great in the mid game. Then, finally, TSM learned their lesson. They give up the top tower, but they get the 3rd Drake. That has to happen. Who cares about a side lane tower when you need to stop the Drake snowball? So good. TSM get a big fight in their jungle, or so it would have seemed. Hooney ends up being on the wrong side on accident, and TSM lose way too much for literally nothing. They should just left him to die. Just leave him to die. And their skirmishing wasn't great this series. It wasn't bad, but it's normally a lot better. And, they were just making some of these. They're getting better to the point of where they're not making as many bad mistakes as, like, Lock-In, but they were making some pretty bad mistakes in the TL and the EG series. And we're seeing less of them in this series, but it's still not all the way there. 3rd Drake goes over to 100 Thieves for free, and you're like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I'm starting to get nervous. Like, I know TSM are the better team, but they're making some pretty big mistakes, and 100 Thieves are capitalizing pretty well. And then after that Drake goes down, TSM just see the opportunity. They're like, screw it, let's go. They make a huge play. Hooney dives in. They win a huge fight at 100 Thieves red where Lost just gets massive. And then they get the Baron. Like, this was the thing of the series. Like, TSM had amazing Baron control. I mean, yes, obviously speak, I had to steal it in game 2, but whatever. I don't care. Like, the rest of it was good. The rest of it was strong. He makes an incredible engage and almost turns everything around. TSM don't really worry about it. They get a kill back. Then they get the 2nd Drake. But Hooney gets picked off again. And even with TSM being up 4K, it feels really close. But then in the mid game. But then. I love it. In the mid game, Sword Art gets another great pick. He turns it right back around. TSM jump on in. They see this is their opportunity. Spica dives in onto Ryoma. Power of Evil dives in. Alts. Everything works. And they pull off the massive team fight, and they win it all. And in a very weird series, they win 3-1 over 100 Thieves. Weird series, man. I'm going to explain why. Because here are my overall notes. So I hate the Nidalee pick. No more of that, please. We're done with that. It just didn't work with the Gnar. It doesn't work with a lot of the stuff that they're going to pick. If the Renekton's not there, if they're not going to pick the Camille, which I'm okay with, just don't pick it, guys. I know it can synergize well and it can do other things, but just let's be done with it. The Everfrost build is cool. Just, it's not working for me. Let's do something else. Okay? Also, thank you, Hooney, for taking a bullet for the entire series, basically. Actually, it was the entire series. He got counterpicked every single game in this series. He had to pick early, and he was put into bad positions, and he was still playing really, really well. I mean, he was winning one of those NAR games into a Jace. That's tough, man. Also, I guess TSM are just going to give up Barons for Drakes now. I guess that's just a thing. Don't really get that, but whatever. They played games 1 and 2 pretty well outside of the almost throwing game 2, but they understood their team comp was for the late game, and they played those late they played for the late game. They said, "Hey, we're going to keep it close enough in the early game that we will make our charge back in the late game." And had they not been terrible at giving up all the Drakes, basically, I think they close out games 1 and 2, and we're feeling really good. That is a very simple thing that they can clean up, and they will have to. I wasn't nervous, like I said, really until game 4. I really wasn't. I watched those first 2 games, and Brian Brock Rockwood, texts me, and he's like, "Dude, how's your heart rate after that game?" I was like, "You know what? Game 2, really wasn't that worried about it." I had confidence in them, and I had a lot of confidence in them in game 1. And even after they lost game 3, I was like, okay, simple mistakes. Let's change those. I think we can still win this series. Game 4, though, didn't start off great. They started making some really bad mistakes and overcommitments. And I was like, oh, God, here we go. But they figured it out. Power of Evil had his worst week of playoffs, in my opinion. I know he made some pretty big plays, but he also missed a lot of big ults. He was given the Azir. He didn't look as clean. It just wasn't as good as it had been. And it's not necessarily because of Ryoma, who did play well. Again, I want to repeat that. Ryoma played fine. I just think that they are a better team with Damonte. I think he fits their style. They want to play through FBI, and guess what? Outside of game 3, the game they won, they really didn't play through FBI. He's your best player. Play through him, man. I will die on that hill. I will die on the hill of 100 Thieves are a better team when they play through FBI, and they just didn't. They tried to play through someday. They tried a little bit to play through Ryoma, and then they just kind of tried to play. And it just didn't work. Everybody knows that they're going to try to play through FBI, and TSM kind of played for that, and they just didn't do anything. It was really interesting. Sword Art made some huge plays. He wasn't great, but he was really good. Overall, it was a pretty strong series for him. He's not making the roams and stuff. It seems like his style has changed up a little bit, and I kind of wish they would go back again to what they were doing near the end of the split, but that's all right. They're winning 3-1. Late game was better after it was kind of bad in the EG and TL series, but then their early game was rough. Like, they're not mixing everything well together. And I know that sometimes you pick for bad early games, but for better late games. But I'm just saying, like, they have to do better at mitigating the losses early game if they're going to play the late game style as hard as they are. And, 100 Thieves are a great early game team. There's no doubt about it. So I understand that. I think that this is an interesting game overall. And my last major thought on this is I just felt like TSM were holding back on this series. It wasn't until game 4 that we really saw them kind of pick something different, because I just don't think they were worried. There are times where you don't show things if you don't have to. You don't show, like, it's so prime example for those of you who might watch the NFL. Teams in the playoffs or, right before the playoffs, if they're already going to make it, like, they won't show all their plays until they need to, right? They'll leave some secret types of plays or secret routes or, just secret schemes for their team that they call once it's necessary, right? Once they're playing an opponent who is going to punish them if they don't pull out some of these things. And we saw it in the TL series, right? Like they played a little off-brand TSM League of Legends, which didn't work, but it wasn't bad. They were still close in most of their games, but it felt like they were really into it. Like they were throwing the kitchen sink at them. And it felt like during the Evil Geniuses series too that there was this sort of energy that they were ready to go and they were going at them. In this 100 Thieves series, it just did not feel like it. And I'm okay with that personally, by the way. I want to say this. That's why I wasn't that worried about this series. I really wasn't. Like, I did not, like, I think I said it, in Thursday's episode. I'm not that worried about 100 Thieves. I was worried about Dignitas, not worried about 100 Thieves. I just think that they don't play a style that TSM really has to worry about. And I think we saw it the whole series. I mean, TSM gave up Drake after Drake after Drake after Drake after Drake. They just weren't worried about it. Sure, it came back to bite them 2 games, but they still won 3-1. And 2 of their games were pretty convincing. And their other win probably would have been really convincing had they not, almost thrown it with just a bad fight. Overall, I'm happy, guys. I mean, I am. They're top 3. This is where I wanted them to be. They get a chance again at Liquid. And then they got to go straight into C9 the next day. But, if they can play a good series and win off that momentum and then use it into a C9 game, that'd be awesome. That'd be really cool. I'm going to have to figure out what I'm going to do this week in terms of the Thursday episode because I am pretty busy this week. I think I'm going to just record a really long episode on Wednesday because I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to think about it. What I think I might do is I will prep a TL series episode and then I'm going to decide. Yeah, I think okay, here's what I'm going to do. I made the decision. Thursday will be just a TL primer because obviously if we don't win, then it doesn't matter. I can't really prep for a C9 one. But should we win on Saturday, I will have Sunday morning an episode out for TSM C9 should that happen, which I hope it will. So be on the lookout. Potentially 3 episodes this week. That's exciting. Man, it's been almost an hour, and I felt like I ran through these notes as fast as I could. Holy moly. Whew. That was quick. Feels good, though. Feels good. I want to repeat. Yes, this game I wasn't really that nervous because I think TSM are at least the second best team in the LCS. I think they have a chance to be the first best team. I do. And I don't think that 100 Thieves has any chance. I still don't think that they're the 4th best team in the LCS. I actually, after watching this playoffs, I actually think it was EG. Hot take there, but I think it's EG. I think you have TSM, TL, and C9 in their own tier. Then I think you have EG and actually Dignitas and then 100 Thieves. I still think Dignitas just outdrafted themselves and really hurt themselves, but 100 Thieves still played pretty cleanly, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but I still think that they're the 5th or 6th best team at playoffs. So sure, they finished top 4, good for them, but they got some stuff they got to figure out during this offseason, mini offseason. All right, if you like the show, please take a second to like, subscribe, and comment if you're watching on our YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss another episode. Let's continue making this the #1 TSM podcast. I really appreciate all your guys' support. Please leave a review anywhere, comments, all that jazz. Really appreciate it. Please share this with your friends, guys. I want to continue to create a good community. I know I've been not as active in the Talking TSM Discord. I'm really, really busy right now with coaching baseball and everything, so I've just not been able to be as active as I would like to be because before baseball, I got to make sure I focus on getting all my TGH work done and stuff. So I do apologize for that, but do know we will be doing another fantasy season. I will be sending out invites and stuff for that after MSI. We'll get it all figured out. I believe most everybody's staying, and I've had one person reach out. They would like a spot should that open. So, we'll be working on that. But yeah, you can hit me up on Twitter if you do want to reach out and you want to play in the Fantasy LCS series at TGH Robert Haynes or at TGH Esports. Lastly, head to thegamehouse.com. Follow all of our esports content, including TSM stuff. And with that, thanks for tuning in. This show comes out every Monday and Thursday, and it is exclusively for your TSM earholes. I'm Robert Haynes, and this has been Talking TSM. See y'all on Thursday.